I've had quite an adventure on social media, particularly LinkedIn here, since the pandemic in 2020. And I used LinkedIn before then to build up my business. And it's funny because what I did, people say, oh, you can't do that. Well, I did it and it worked. But what I did before 2020 that worked on LinkedIn doesn't work anymore. So I certainly wouldn't do it right now. That company is a $1.5 million passive income company right now. It's a lead generation sales company that turned into a revenue department, really on retainer for all kinds of different businesses. We've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients. So it's everything from MSPs, which was tough to sell, to really high-end customer experience, branding companies. There's a geospatial mapping company that sells Esri technology, consulting services to governments. We succeeded with them. They made $3 million off of our capabilities. I had a company that built a platform on top of Salesforce, Force.com years ago for CPG packaged goods marketers. We got them into the million in revenue into the second year. Like I've done a lot with it. I've had massive failures with some companies. I've had successes with companies where they thought it was a failure. One of my earlier clients for the very beginning of this, and I'm going to tie this into my social media adventure and LinkedIn in a minute, but so they did high-end like corporate communications, annual reports, sustainability strategies, and for companies like BP Amoco need this stuff, and all of them. Any public corporation needs this. So I was selling that stuff for them, and I built them a massive pipeline. It was unbelievable. Like we had meetings with VPs of corporate communications at corporations all over the world, online, on the phone. I did them for them, and we couldn't close any business because that's not how it works in that industry. You got to develop the relationships because these are slow-moving corporate communications departments. And they did this big brand project with a friend of mine, and they were real happy about the branding project. And after working with me for a year, they were starting to get really frustrated because it takes a long time. You build the relationships. So the people who succeed in corporate communications are really good at getting on a plane, going and seeing people and taking them out for drinks. And the people who built the company that these people now were running basically as their own did that. That's how the guy did it. And the people who did the work now run it. And they thought it was because they're good writers. Nobody cares. It's the relationship. So I got the door open, got them in all the relationships, and they didn't know what to do with it because they hate talking to people and building relationships. They want to write and do their stuff. In other words, do the work. So the idea of copying, the idea of following somebody else, the idea of a social media system that's guaranteed to get you a seven-figure passive income company is hilarious to me because I did it. And I understand one of the core principles of this, which is you've got to find your own lane in terms of doing it. So I'm going to talk about the social media lane from my experience on LinkedIn. So when I first saw social media in business emerge, I was fascinated. And I thought, this is definitely something. And the reason was because I got tired of trying to figure out who worked in the companies. One of the hardest parts for me doing business development in new markets was getting the names of people. And this goes way back. So when I got into Baxter, when I was selling marketing communications services years ago, I had to network through the HR department, the legal. It was amazing what I had to do just to figure out, hey, how many divisions do you guys have? And I would draw org charts because there was nowhere to get the information. So I had to call them up and network through the bottom rungs, the little dark corners of the organization, because I knew people would just tell me because they didn't know who I was. So I'd call up and I'd just say, this is a true story. So I called up Eli Lilly, big pharma company, and I don't remember exactly how. I'm talking about Baxter now. Yeah, let me think if I how did I get into Baxter? But I got into Baxter and we did, I think we did 1 million in revenue. Maybe it was less. I don't remember, but I got through all the departments. And there's 4 divisions in Baxter, 4 major divisions. And the division where I got most of the business from was the PD division, which is called peritoneal dialysis. And it was a project the US group in marketing was putting together. It was a very specific project. And I networked somehow into it. And the company I worked for didn't have any experience in the industry, which is very difficult to get in that. But we went in really cheap with something different and got the job. And I think it's because they didn't know any better. They shouldn't have hired us, but I was pretty good. And I think I just kind of made a magic trick in the room and they were like, oh, he must know what he's doing. And the company was excellent that I worked for and showed up really well with a great idea, which the creative department came up with, not me, but I helped guide it into something different and cool. And then we couldn't deliver it. So I really screwed this thing up and almost lost my job, I think, because of being pretty far. It's called selling vaporware in the software industry. Well, what did that lead to? A mess and a lot of money because I apologized. And a lot of people in that company weren't particularly enamored with the people that had hired. One person in particular had hired us. So other people, I think, saw it and I got in, but they didn't even know what I was doing. This is the funny thing about corporations. They don't know what they're doing. Each office is doing its own thing in a lot of these places. So I'm in there and I'm networking around and I met somebody else and she was so happy to meet me. Her name was Nancy and she turned out to be an incredible client. We really connected because she needed help and I had it. And I'd already was in the building. So for somebody like that in a corporation, marketing director level, someone who's already in the building is an easier choice because you already know where the bathroom is and you already know where the parking lot is. I'm making a joke, but basically in corporations, their life is hard. If you can make it easier and you're good and you're not going to get them fired and you're nice to them and help them, you got a big insider angle. So when I saw LinkedIn show up and all these other kind of online technologies, I was like, this is going to make it easier to find all these people. That's how I used it. Now let's fast forward years later. So that's my experience with LinkedIn at the beginning. It was a data system for me just to get names so I could people I could call. It's faster. Now let's go later. So now I'm a networking maniac. So I'm all over Chicago. I'm traveling around the country actually and I'm networking and I'm selling marketing technology. It was AI basically. It was as the media companies were coming into form, Facebook, the ad network. They're ad networks basically. They're technology platforms that bring buyers and sellers together, and the product is the user's data and the content that all the users are giving them for free. And the whole idea is you got to know the intent of that visitor on the system through the algorithms, the technology, the AI. They've been doing this forever. AI is not new. Um, CPG chat's new. AI is not new. And it's been going on forever. So how do you then bring the advertiser, the marketer, the right customer at the right time with the right intent, and then give them what they want, the right content, the right product, the right whatever. That's the game. So they built these ad networks and all this. So I'm trying to figure out how do I make money doing this from the cheap seats because no one in Silicon Valley is going to hire a guy like me because I didn't go to Stanford and I'm not good at math. So they don't even take me seriously. I'm great at business development and they don't take that seriously either because they think it's lead generation and it's not. It's noticing what's next and being on the curve of the trend. And, you know, the people in these technology companies, I know it's my fault. I didn't know how to explain it. I'm so good at what I do and I didn't know how to explain it to them. It was my fault because I'm kind of weird. I do my own thing. I don't know if it's weird. That's the word I would use, or someone else would use. For me, it's I'm having fun. I'm doing my own thing. I'm going to succeed, and I need you to get out of my way. That's how I looked at it. So I was quiet. I let people do whatever they wanted to do, and I looked. And then I had massive insecurity, uncertainty. Any artist of any kind knows what that's like. And I think business developers, creative ones like me, you get it. You know what I'm talking about. And I think you know what that is also called an entrepreneur. So it's that massive insecurity because you see it and they don't, and then you're like, look at that. Wow, that's this LinkedIn thing. That's something. And everybody's like, yeah, but it doesn't work. Or it's like, no, don't you see? In 5 years, this is what's going to happen over here. I don't know for sure, but I got to get in on that. And the other entrepreneurs are like, yeah, let's go. And then everybody else is like, well, no, that's a waste of time. You got to get back to work. And I'm like, but this is the work for me. But then I got to make money. Well, how am I going to make money now? That's the dilemma for business developers because you're in what's next. You're floating into what's next. And as an entrepreneur, it's the same thing. And it's like, well, then I got to take money from a bot, a financial bot. I can't do it. So I worked for a lot of technology software companies at this time. And they take money from bots. One was called Goldman Sachs. And the Goldman bot wants a return because they're not entrepreneurs. They were. Goldman was an entrepreneur. The people working there now just want money and a lot of it. And they want a return for their investment. So I call these financial bots. Nothing against the people. It's just that's their job. So I'm working in companies like this now, and I'm networking, traveling all. And some were bootstrapped. One was just these two guys who were good at business. They were MBAs in marketing, and they did what's called data driven marketing. So it's all about understanding the consumer's intent and propensity to purchase and what they call propensity to attrite and like all this stuff. So then it was easier later because I was able to get the names. I could fly around the country. I went to all these trade shows for these two guys and I got a deal for them and then I got fired. Again, same problem because they're in the matrix of what exists and I'm looking forward, trying to figure out I'm going over here. How do I get you guys to come with me up here? And I can't explain it to guys like that because they just want to analyze data because their mind is on a spreadsheet. I don't know how to use a spreadsheet. I still can't do a pivot table, but they do pivot tables all day long, but they're stuck in their pivot table thinking. And I'm out here saying, oh, there's a nice wave. And they're like, well, did you get a deal yet? I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not relevant. I was, what do you mean it's not relevant? And they get mad. They're like, well, now I'm put on probation. I remember this is literally true. I was working for this guy for a month. This is a 2-person company. They've got one client paying them and they hired me and they only paid me 35 grand or 40 grand a year. And I didn't even have a partnership, but I'm like, this looks cool. I'm doing it. And I was able to at the time. And I'm doing it my way, which is the way that was going to work for them. Because I know what I'm doing and they don't. Well, the issue was, well, Larry, are you going to be a project for us? And he wrote me up in an HR file in a company of 2 people. And I remember taking off Friday afternoon after having like an exhausting week. I'd made like hundreds of calls. I'd networked like a maniac. I'm selling the post office people. Like I'm wandering around, I'm figuring it out. I'm like, and the guy got mad at me because I didn't work Friday afternoon in a 2-person company. And he wrote me up in a file. Like, are you going to be a project? Now, what's funny about it is that this is the dilemma because if you're using social media, I'm totally off track. I'm totally off track with what I was supposed to talk about. All right, let me get back. So the idea of LinkedIn for me was being online with visibility into other people's stuff was like the best intent-based marketing system I could ever even invent. I'm like, thank you, Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn, whoever the hell did this. I love you. Now I can find anybody I want and go get them. And I did. So my target was CEOs of ad agencies, marketing companies, brand companies, um, annual report company. I knew the business. I'd worked in it for years. So, and I got it. I knew how to talk to these people and I knew how to do lead generation. So this was after, and then I'd been working in sales, technology sales, not knowing what I was doing, but I got some deals for people and I got some big jobs without knowing what I was doing either. And then I got fired and okay, it's a long story, but I was really tapped into the zeitgeist of the marketplace because I went to so many conferences, conventions, cold calls. I did so many prospect meetings. It was exhausting, but fun for me. Um, so then I'm like, okay, I got to start my own damn business now. And I did. And it took off immediately. Immediately. I had one client the first year. We got to $4,000 a month in the second month. And then he just kept paying me more and more and more because I was doing the work for him because he had a lead gen company. And I was like, we could be partners. He didn't want to do that. He was already past $1 million. Well, I got past $1 million into the second year. Because I think I did it better than he did. Because I actually did the work. He was up here, riding on the top. I was actually in the ground doing the work and figured it out. And then boom, 1.5 million this last year in revenue. And I haven't worked in it for 4 years. How did I do it? I went to these people on LinkedIn and I reached out to them and said, I got a different way to do business development. You want to talk? And they said yes. And they hired me. And I got in a car or I got in an airplane and I went in their office and I said, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm thinking. You can't do it anymore. You can't do that anymore. I could go sell that as a LinkedIn product. I could sell a, 5-7 steps to a 1.5 million passive income business and make a big social proof case about my business. And I could bring up Glenn and we could do talks and look at what we did. And I could get people to buy my coaching package to do it that way and then show them how to do lead generation in a way that doesn't work anymore. Because that wasn't even 4 years ago. That was way before the pandemic. I didn't even remember when I started that business. That was like 2016, 2015. You can't do it anymore. It's all bots now with cold outreach bots. So people are like, I had a friend who runs like a big network. And I like her. And she reached out to me to tell me about what she was doing. And I thought, I'm like, oh my God, Suzanne, like, I'm not going to sign up for your thing. That's how cynical it is now. You can't do what I did way back then. And today's a LinkedIn. So what happened next? Summer 2020, I'm on LinkedIn doing lead gen. And we integrated it with our prospecting system for my other company. And it was working to get a lot of attention and interest, but it was kind of like, it was funny what was happening because our clients were getting pissed off because they're like, I keep getting on calls with these people and then they try to sell me their services. Well, what's going on? I was like, oh, okay. Now I'm looking back and it's like, the problem with LinkedIn is everyone active on LinkedIn is trying to sell something. It's like going to networking events where everybody's selling. So everyone's looking for clients from other people who are looking for clients. So this is what was happening. So our pipeline was great. Like our pipelines were, there was one guy in particular, this guy, Vincent, who was really smart. Really, you can't fool him for too long. And he owned a company that had reinvented an approach for big consulting firms to manage their clients and intellectual property. It was this guy's a genius. He's a genius. And he created this massive thing and it was impossible to sell. It was way too big a risk for a conservative consulting company to get rid of all of the systems they were using and use his product. And I'm like, I don't know how to sell them. Well, we got him so many meetings, one meeting after another. And I don't know if he ever signed anybody. He may have, but this guy is brilliant. And that's the problem sometimes with startups, and software in particular, because he had the best. It was better than what they were doing. But now you're going to a big consulting firm and say, scrap Lotus Notes. I went to work for Gallagher and their private high net worth client. This was my detour into insurance for a year. They were using Lotus for their company wide system, and I'm like, what the? I'm like, you know how old that is? This is what happens with big corporations, but they're used to it, and it's hard to change people in these matrix systems. So they're still using this. They call it legacy technology. And I'm going, Vincent needs us to sell this stuff, and I can't figure out how to do it. But I got him a million meetings, good ones, good conversations. Now I know how. It's you find the open thinkers in these corporations. So I worked for another company, Optimine, where that's how they did it. And they had 4 pilots with people who got it in these massive corporations that did ad network. They did Google AdWords bid optimization, and they used math, and they did it better than their competitors. There was a company called Kenshu, Marin, Efficient Frontier, platform systems the big media agencies were using. And the company I worked for, Optimine, had a better product. And I sold it. I got deals. And I was at the next tier down though. So they had already figured out the top companies, because that system's got to work live in a Google AdWords account that has massive data running through it, or you don't know if it works or not. And that is really hard to get a corporation to let you do. And these guys did. And then I was one of the first sales hires. I think I was the first sales hire. The VP of business development was one of the partners until he got pushed out. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. No, fuck that. He's a great guy. His name's Bill. So what happened was I'm able now to bring that story into the marketplace. So on social media, it made it easier for me to look into companies and see how they're structured and organized. And then I could figure out how to connect into the people in them in all kinds of unique ways. And that's called business development. I call this system More Money Now. So More Money Now is really just noticing in any given marketplace where things are, what's going on, adjusting appropriately based on responses to things. And then calibration is tweaking and adjusting the approach and the flow. So that's the 3-legged stool of More Money Now. And there's 5 stages. So if you go to the content page up here and you scroll down to More Money Now, I've got the videos about how to do it. So I made all that public and free. So go ahead and check it out. And what I noticed with being in the marketplace with this kind of a system with LinkedIn was that it gets saturated at a certain point where people just sort of pull it. So it's what happened with email too. So I crushed email in the early days with call sales partners, because I could send an email to somebody and I get 15, 20 responses of people who said, yeah, I'd love to talk to you. That's how I got to 1.5 million so quick. Can't do it anymore. I was at a My Morning Jacket concert. And this was years ago. And I got my website got taken down from GoDaddy. Google had bought a company called Postini, and they were putting up all these filters to keep people like me out. And it was because of the data integrity. So we were dumping data in from places like LinkedIn that wasn't scrubbed and tested for verification and validity. This is called deliverability in email. So I became a deliverability expert over a couple of years, because I'm like, they're going to crush us. And that's why I feel like, well, Google almost destroyed my company. I'm doing $400,000 or $500,000 a year in income out of it. And then all of a sudden the website's taken down. And I'm like, I'm screwed. What am I going to do? Well, I had to reinvent. And that's the idea of the revenue department, which is where that company went to. It became a revenue generation department with the pipeline. And it's much more involved and intricate now than just pounding out emails and getting people to respond and dialing and getting them to pick up and then getting them on the pipeline and moving them through the pipeline. There's much more to it now. It's much more complex because of the technology changes, but also the societal barrier to anybody trying to make a living, because people are like, stay out of my inbox. Well, this has now happened on LinkedIn. So now on LinkedIn, what I see is the copywriters are cleaning up, but that may not last either because it's hard to do. So they're selling copywriting, how to copyright, or they'll copyright for you. Now that could work. Passive income, a copywriter hiring, but they're expensive. Like most of them, to be able to do that is that's a lifetime. I worked with top writers when I was in marketing communications. Remember this guy Leo? It's probably one of the top in the industry, marketing communications industry, and he sat down with me and we're trying to figure out what to do for. I think we were writing a treatment for Sprint when that was big for their user experience conference. I was trying to get it, and he wrote the pitch with me. And I remember this guy's a genius. It was my ideas, sort of. It was really his, but what he could do is he could hear what I was saying, what I saw. I said, here's what's going on at Sprint. Here's their customer. Here's them. Here's what goes on at this meeting. And all of a sudden, he writes this treatment. And I'm like, oh my God, I said that? I did, but it's the way he interpreted it and pitched it back to me. And I'm like, oh, they're going to buy this. Well, it turns out they didn't, but that was my fault. Because it wasn't really qualified and I was desperate to get a deal. And it was like, that was $1 million business. That was $1 million opportunity. And it would have gone on for years because they don't never change. It's one of these never change company situations. But we weren't a good fit. So the point is that the copywriting persuasion marketing skill that guy had was super advanced. And that's why he was always able to be a little grumpy. And he picked the projects he wanted to work on, and he cost a lot of money. And the people I worked for were the top kind of people. So they did marketing CMO conference for McDonald's, and they were at the top echelon in these industries. And when you're up there at those levels, it's a different game. And the people are really the best at what they do. And when you're in a room with people like that, there's a bit of impatience sometimes. And they're kind of like, you know what? I'm a freelancer right now, but I can go freelance somewhere else if you don't get Larry under control so he knows what information to give me. Now, I think those conversations happened a lot because it would come back to me and they'd say, you know, when we go to and do a meeting with Leo, you need to have this a little bit more organized. You can't just jump in and start talking, which is what I do. Now, I don't know what's right or wrong. I just know that with social media and on LinkedIn, you have to know what the times are telling you. What the times are telling me right now on LinkedIn is stop selling, stop pitching, stop marketing, stop hustling. There's a slang word for this called glazing. And I have a middle school daughter and they laugh, sucking up to the teacher, glazing. There's another form of glazing. It's called marketing. So I'm not saying don't be a marketer. I'm saying people are able to see through the bullshit more clearly because there's so much of it. So there's an exhaustion. And that's why I don't do social selling stuff and I don't take networking meetings anymore on LinkedIn really. And I just won't do it anymore because I know they're just trying to sell me and I'm trying to sell them. And I don't want to do it. Plus I already know how to do it. So I got bored. So I'm like, what's next? And I think that's the point. How I built a $1.5 million passive income company. It's because I'm always thinking about what's next. And I'm thinking about what's next for me. In other words, what resonates for me? What kind of life do I want? Who do I want to be with? Why do I want to be with them? What kind of contribution do I want to make to the world? For most of my life, I didn't really care. The contribution I wanted to make was to get enough money to do whatever I wanted. And, and I still like that and want that. And I don't have that yet. I will, I hope. But now I feel differently. I see a big shift and I see an opportunity that's beyond me and beyond you. I think there's an us going on. I think there's a coming together happening in the world. And I think what's in the way is a lot of, donuts with a lot of glaze on them and sprinkles and very carefully arranged, beautiful designs. And that's all great. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to something really simple, which is how do you find your own way in this place? All right, so I'm gonna talk about something that kind of happened this morning and yesterday, um, which was pretty intense. So I woke up and I felt the intense, throbbing pain, and I started thinking about this feeling, and it was a feeling of this isn't going to work. What I'm doing isn't going to work. It's going to fail, and I have to compromise, and I have to start networking, and I got to start. And I'm like, they don't get it. They don't know what I'm talking about. And they think I'm just selling them and they're selling me. And we're trapped in this circular system. Or they don't like me. I'm not popular enough. I'm not doing it right. I'm not saying the right. Okay. So I have a whole list. I've had this feeling since I was 5 years old. And the feeling is there's no place for me in this world. I don't belong. So it's a feeling of I don't belong here. And I've always had that. And I know what it is. And it means that there is no job for me in this world. There's no place for me in the matrix. And that's true. So it turned out the feeling was a wake up call to not compromising. And I know this is true, and I've known it for 4 years now. However, it's still there as a feeling and it's intense. And I call it Larry Call's belief system. And I know where I got it and I know what it is. And this morning, or it was, no, it started last night, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this isn't, and my furnace went out. So I got to pay for a furnace. And I mean, I'm not going to give you the whole story of different money things, but it's always pressure based on money or success or being known or recognized or validated that kicks this feeling into motion. Now I know not to run and get the thing the feeling wants me to bring back to it so it goes away, which is always external validation, whether it's a success or somebody says good boy or says, oh, I like your post, or somebody shows up and pays. It's waiting for that. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not playing that game. I got smart. So not that smart. So last night, this is what I did. I'm hoping this will help you. So I was reading Course in Miracles again. I started reading it again. I've read through most of it, and I started reading it again like a week ago. I'm like, some reason I need to, and I understand it differently. And I'm like, now I'm like, wow, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need to be reading. So last night I wrote, what is this pain? I'm stuck this evening. I love the creation process, group, and work. There is still no market response, interest, or proof of success. That's not true. That's not true. The pain is the same sort as always. That's true. I'm trying this from Course in Miracles. And then last night before I went to bed, I'm like, I gotta get this out of me because I don't want to go to bed with this stuff going on in my head. So what I conceptualized from Course in Miracles was thought one, thought two. So thing one, thing two. Thought one is the lie I tell myself. Thought two, what's true. And what Course in Miracles is saying is the same thing Socrates says in Galileo, which is two truths can't contradict each other. Two truths can't contradict each other. And I'm like, all right, that's how I'm going to get here. Now, I remember using Dale Carnegie's system, probably late 20s, and it was the same thing. It's what are you afraid of? And it really was two truths can't contradict each other. It was recognition that the fear is just a fear and not a real thing. So I'm like, okay, this could work. And it did. Now I feel great. So thought one, I scare people away. I'm too strange. They won't come. I need to change myself. I screwed up. I blew it. It's too late. I did this stuff with Sharon Valenti for like 2 years. She's in my group. She's one of our founding partners. And I was reading this and I'm like, this is the Byron Katie stuff. Is this true? And Sharon's got her own version of it and runs a fireplace weekly thing. And I'm like, I did it without you, Sharon, because of you. You taught me how to do this. 2 years though, from before I could do this on my own. She did it with me. So now I can do it by myself. She taught me. I'm doing it wrong. My articles are too long. Somebody told me that. It was my wife. I'm like, but I want to write these articles like this. Nobody will care. Who am I to think I'm special? This is all a hoax. We will fail. I'll lose everything. I'm terrible. This was thought one. And then Sharon's question would be, is that true? And then I wrote thought two. It's all real. And I thought, which one's true? Thought one or thought two? Thought two, it's all real. I'm going to get what I want in my life. I'm going to impact the world in a positive way. I'm going to feel a sense of satisfaction with all my hard work, serving a greater purpose. We call it serving the grail, not chasing the grail. Instead of Monty Python, the search for the Holy Grail, instead of chasing the grail and ending up in a parking lot going home. This is the best movie ever. Serve the grail. In other words, humanity. That's what that movie was about to me. It was also hilarious. So serve the grail. I get to do that. Serve the grail. Serve humanity. What a gift that is to get to do that in your life. What a gift that is to get to do that in your life. How lucky am I? Well, I need money to pay for my furnace. I need this. Okay, so which column? All right, so that's column left. That's the left column. This is hard to do. It took me a long time to learn how to do this myself. Thought one. I can see it. Okay, though, that's thought one. That's thought one. That's Larry Call. That's Larry Call's belief system. That's called the tape. What's thought two? It's all real. Thought two is anything that feels positive and uplifting and connected. Your version of this will be different, but the principle's the same. It's split mind, and the inner battle is the battle, and you can't win it by fighting it. It's a paradox. So at the end of the Matrix, Neo, he's dodging bullets. He's catching bullets. I mean, I know martial arts. Like I got the Bruce Lee martial arts stuff. I don't know how to fight. You don't put me in an MMA ring, but I would not attack me in a dark alley because I'm going to come at you. Boom, 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 boom. I can do that because I've been studying it for 40 years. Doing it, not studying, practicing it for 40 years. But that energetic flow is where the intelligence is. And as my mind is attacking me with these thoughts, left column, on the right, that intelligent energy is flowing and saying, I got you, man. We're good. We're good. It's fine. We're good. And I'm like, are you sure? How about today? How about a big win today? And I'm like, you just got one, dumbass. I'm like, yeah, but what about money? I was like, don't worry about that. It's fine. Well, no, but I want that. So this is the inner battle. So Neo is fighting Agent Smith at the end of the first Matrix. How did he win the battle? He stopped fighting. He leaped into the monster. Where's the monster? It's inside himself. And that's what Course in Miracles said too. It's like underneath. This is Sully from Monsters, Inc. You know, the little kid opens the closet and there's a friendly little monster in there. It's blue. And there's a goofy one behind him. And then there's a whole world, Monsters, Inc. And the kid goes into the monster scary world and it's just fine. This is what we're doing. This is life. That's why that movie's so popular. Because it's like, there's nothing to be afraid of. Don't be afraid of the dark. And I got that instead of the money that I wanted to pay for my fucking furnace. that I got to replace this month.